Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I am Justine Reichman, your host, and today we have Elysabeth Alfano. Welcome, Elysabeth. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Justine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Elysabeth. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so pleased to have you here today. And just so you know, I have watched your videos. I watch them. I'm sitting there. I analyze them. I'm like, she looks so professional. It looks like I'm watching CNN for LinkedIn. So I was very impressed and a little bit like I had a little envy over your videos. I wanted to know how you did it.
Oh my gosh, so simple. So I just give myself permission to fail. So I'm live on LinkedIn. I do it every week. It's called the Plant-Based Business Hour. And it's every week, little plug here, 1 p.m. Pacific time, Plant-Based Business Hour. And they're long form hour interviews. And I just sort of say like, if the tech gods are with me, it'll work out. I'm opposite natural light. So, tip, natural light is your friend. I'm opposite natural light. I have, a $40 microphone from Amazon, really not a lot of big things, like even my earbuds. These are what I got on a plane when we used to be able to fly. I mean, I'm not high tech at all, but I just kind of roll with it. And really the guests that I bring on, these CEOs and entrepreneurs and scientists and advocates and researchers and athletes and other things, but really primarily in business, these people who are moving the needle in the plant-based and cellular ag and fermented protein space for people, the planet, and animals, all through innovation and creating a entirely new food supply system. Actually, that's what we're talking about. So, it's when you're so immersed in this cutting edge new world that we're building, I just sort of say if there's a tech problem, it's just not high on the priority list.
Well, I think that that's a really brave way to go about doing it. But not only is it brave, I also just think that your videos and the way that you show up looks so professional. When I look at your videos, it looks like you're literally in a studio. From the banners that you have on your video to the way that you present, it really does look like you have a team, that it's not a one-woman show.
It's a total one-woman show. I'm so glad it comes off differently. I have my, bunny slippers that I'm wearing on my feet. I mean, it's not CNN, folks, but I do appreciate it. And sort of shout out to CNN. I would love to talk about the plant-based business news on CNN. So you can have me as a guest anytime. I do a lot of TV and radio anyway. So in addition to my own show on LinkedIn, the Plant-Based Business Hour, I am a guest on radio and TV. So I guess I'm also kind of over the hump of being nervous about it, and that might help.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad you shared that with us, and I'm glad that our listeners now know a little bit more about you and how they can actually hear from you outside of our podcast today, but on your very own podcast, which you have.
Yes. So the podcast, so, we're all so crazy busy, particularly if we're mission aligned, so sometimes people say to me, oh, I love that you do the Plant-Based Business Hour. And I say like, oh, I do. But that's sort of the volunteer arm of my life. I mean, nobody makes money in journalism to start with, and certainly not in podcasts, particularly when you don't have a CNN studio behind you. So I do have the Plant-Based Business Hour, which is this hour-long deep dive interview show, and the Plant-Based Business Minute, which is a recorded headline news show. I break down the top week headlines, each in a minute or less. That's every Friday on LinkedIn. But those are just sort of to pass along information to the plant-based landscape, because I'm so personally deeply aligned that I know that information is the key to progress. So I just want to get people the facts and the less than obvious information. Again, talking to a CEO, getting the behind the scenes of what's really happening for the plant-based trends and market, et cetera. I want to get people all that information. Now, how I spend the majority of my hours is with my consulting firm, Plant Powered Consulting. And that is 60 hours a week, just that. So we're not even talking about the podcast. And there I help plant-based brands or non-plant-based brands navigate the plant-based landscape. So a lot of people come to me initially for press because that's how they see me because of the Plant-Based Business Hour. So I start on press strategy and execution, but because of my own business background, I have an MBA and I brand manager on Special K and Frosted Mini Wheats. That's where I started my career with Kellogg Corporation. So Because my own background, people realize once they get through the press stuff with me that, oh, maybe you could stick around for some business strategy and marketing strategy and execution, and then even investor relations, et cetera. So I end up staying the long haul. People bring me in for some quick press, and then I just end up staying for a couple of years usually. So I have a lot of clients because they never end. They start with me, oh, let's just do a 2-month contract for some press. And then they just stay. So I have this growing list of clients. And if anybody is working in the plant-based space, all I can say to them is thank you for doing all that you do. And I feel you because I'm working 16-hour days, 7 days a week because I love every second of it.
You are one busy lady.
I'm pretty busy. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure when you eat, sleep, or do anything else.
I usually eat standing up over the sink. I mean, I'm sort of joking, but my partner's like, you must sit down. And I'm like, well, I don't know when I'll have time to do that. But I do, of course, take time off. You need to, otherwise you burn out. And I don't want to burn out. I want to be here for the long haul because this is, again, personally meaningful work to me. And before we started this podcast, we were talking about hair. So anybody who can see me now, knows that I have silver hair. So, I want change in my lifetime. I'm not 25. I want change in my lifetime. So, get to work, people. We don't have all day. So I don't have time to sit down.
Oh, but I got a good laugh out of you.
Oh,
I
good.
love to laugh. I love to laugh. You've got time to laugh, right?
Yes. Time to laugh and talk about the best medicine. Yes, absolutely.
I think so too. Wow. Well, I so appreciate you sharing all of that. But what I'm curious about now is how did you get into this? How did you get into the plant-based business?
Yes, it's, a winding road. So I was one of those people who I was trying to go vegan my whole life, really, for as long as I can remember, down to the age of like 5. I couldn't chew meat. I couldn't tell you, of course, at 5 years old that it was because of factory farms, but when I would bite into it, I knew something was wrong instinctually. And I couldn't chew. And, as a kid, I didn't hold back, so I'd be at the dinner table with my parents gagging and I'd be like, don't make me eat it. Don't make me eat it. And they thought I was being fussy. And so they said, hey, this is really bad behavior on your part. You have to stop this. And I was like, I can't. And they're like, no, you sit at the table until you finish your food, young lady. And they also were afraid that I wasn't going to get my protein. So they really, out of, love for me, I love them and they love me back, by the way. So there's no problems, but really just out of concern for me, they were pretty strict. And they said, you cannot leave this dinner table or hang out with anyone in the family until you finish your food. So I would be there as a kid, really not being able to do it. So I started hiding the food all over the house, like in my pants pockets and under the table. And I would go to the garbage can in the kitchen when everyone had left and they were watching TV and I wasn't allowed to be included. I would hide all the meat at the bottom of the garbage can so that it looked like I ate it, but nobody would find it. Okay, well, I'm only 5 or 6. So ultimately they do find these scraps and then they punish me for lying. So I really have it in my head, like, I have to eat meat. Now, I'm a kid. Now, fast forward way into my 40s. I'm still thinking, okay, we have to eat meat. But now I know about factory farms and I know that everybody else knows about factory farms. And so it becomes clear to me like, oh gosh, I guess this is what it means to be an adult. We do that which we know is wrong and we do it anyway. And it was just a burden for me. Like, everyone would order pepperoni pizza. I would eat it too. And I would think like, how do I get out of this? I just didn't know what to do. So then my nephew, who is an athlete, he comes back from the University of Oregon and he says, oh, nutrition coach says, if I want to play for the team, no meat, no dairy. And I was like, I knew it. I knew it all along. I'd been waiting way into my adult years because I'd been so punished as a kid. I had been waiting for a professional or an adult to give me permission to not eat meat. And when my nephew told me that like the whole team was no meat, no dairy, I was like, that's it. I'm vegan mid-sentence. So, I'd been waiting, decades really to find a path to veganism. And so when I did find that path, I wasn't going to give up. So I just shifted everything that I did in my work life, in my personal life. Everything that I did shifted. So as I said, I have a business background. I went to business school. I worked for the Kellogg Company. I worked for IBM. I started my own business that I ran for 10 years, an international business. Alongside that, I was doing some investing. I just shifted my whole skill set to plant-based. So, initially I started with journalism just because that was kind of a fun hobby I was doing on the side anyway with my investments and my business that I was running. So I kept up the journalism and I kept up the business, but I just shifted the whole um, goal of it all to be plant-based. So then I started Plant Powered Consulting, my consulting agency, and I shifted over to the Plant-Based Business Hour and the Plant-Based Business Minute, and I just kind of live it and breathe it every day.
Wow. So I'm curious though, when you were 5, there was just this innate feeling you didn't want to chew it, you couldn't chew it, you didn't want it.
Right.
And as you got older, what was stopping you from, going to the barbecues and eating a hot dog or a hamburger? What made you not want that burger or the beef taco or whatever it is that all the other kids were eating?
I can't explain it to you.
No?
It was wrong. I just knew it. Like the whole thing, it taste, I mean, the taste is fine, I guess, but that feeling after you eat it, like, gosh, I'm so heavy. Oh gosh, I can't move around. That sluggish, heavy feeling. Sometimes, like I remember, oh gosh, maybe 15 years, so in my 30s, early 40s, no, in my early 40s, I had a chicken burrito. It haunts me to this day. There were like little pieces of the meat is ligaments, right? It's but there's
Mystery
this
meat? Should we call it mystery meat? Was it mystery
n-
meat?
was it mystery? I guess maybe it's mystery meat. Maybe. Well, I think of mystery meat, I think of like Spam. Like there's this ground up thing you don't know what it is, or a hot dog you don't know what it is, but it's so ground you can't really taste it. This had like, sometimes you bite into meat and you're like, I'm not on muscle, I'm on ligament now or something or whatever, a tendon. I've got a tendon. What? That's just effed up. I mean, that burrito stays with me to this day of like how disgusting that was. And I had half the burrito and I just remember sitting in my car, I was waiting for my nephew to pick him up from the train station. I was sitting in the car and I was like, I've got to find another way. This is disgusting beyond belief. I was so grossed out and I felt sick and yeah, it's
So
never
it's more of
appealing to
just
me.
how it made you feel. And then ultimately, as you got older and learned about the factory farming, it turned into a mission around that and sort of the
Yes, I'll say 100% yes, but I'll say that even though I hadn't connected the dots, this is not making me feel great, and it comes from factory farms. I think there was an innate connection in me, even though I wasn't making it consciously. Because I remember with that burrito sitting there and thinking, like, this is bad all the way around. I have to find a way out. And I remember thinking to myself, I have to find a way out. Like I felt trapped from all the pressure of like, you have to eat these things that are around you. You have no other choices but these meats, that same feeling I felt as a kid. Like it wasn't my choice. I had to do it. I just felt trapped. Like I got to find a way out.
sounds like you were practicing mindfulness at a very young age.
Well, by this
You
time,
were
by the time
very
I'd had,
evolved.
yeah, again, as a kid, I, wasn't thinking any of this like at the table when I was 5 years old. It was innate, kids like they don't hold back. They have a
Right.
feeling, they have a sensation. They're just like, I don't like it. So that's what I had as a kid. But, again, decades after that, when I'm an adult, picking up my nephew at the train station, eating that burrito, yeah, I was trying to figure it out. And once I did with that, it's so funny. You never know what's going to hit you over the head in life. I mean, once my nephew said to me, okay, University of Oregon nutrition coach says no meat, no dairy. Yes, it clicked for me. But I immediately remembered, within the days to follow that I went vegan, I remember seeing things from Sir Paul McCartney, whom I love, by the way. I remember seeing pictures of dairy cows, thinking it's dairy too. God, now it's not just meat, it's flippin' dairy. All these images came flooding back. It's just so weird. But that was the thing, that nutrition coach, that mainstream, basically University of Oregon nutrition coach was the one that nailed it for me. So you just never know what's going to be the bit of information, which is why I do so much volunteer journalism. You never know what's going to be the piece of information that,
It's going to
starts the
resonate with
landfall.
you, right? That's going to create
Yes.
that change, which is
Right.
really what we're doing here today because
Yes.
we have these conversations so that we can provide the information to the founders and the end consumers so that they can make more informed choices. So
Yes. Yes.
hopefully
Thank
this
you.
will resonate with one of our founders or our listeners so that they can create a more informed choice.
Thank you, Justine. Yes. Thank you for all the work you do.
Oh,
100%.
well, it's a work in progress, and it's something that I think we are both doing together, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you do your share, and I watch yours closely. So I'm appreciative of everything that you do.
Thank you.
So I'd love to continue the conversation and just talk a little bit more about some of the key white spaces you see in the plant-based market, in the plant-based business, and hear from you a little bit about that.
Well, the whole world is a white space. I mean, in a way, I'm not kidding. I really think you start to pick apart the food supply system and you say, oh, we're going to have some more plant-based options. Oh, well, hold on. They're going to be whole food plant-based options too. Oh, well, hold on. There's going to be fermented proteins. There's going to be cellular ag. Oh, why do we want these things? And we can go into more detail here, but why do we want these things? Because they save land, they save water, they save time, they save healthcare costs. We can get into that. They save subsidies, tax dollars. I mean, there's just so many benefits. And once you start peeling away those layers, you realize, oh gosh, we're really talking about a complete upheaval of the entire food supply system. Just like we saw a complete upheaval from, let's say, the typewriter to the computer. Like there's not an app or an innovation that would make me ever go back to the typewriter. That's done. I've moved on to a computer. And the same thing is true with a landline, right? Like there's nothing that would get me to invest in a landline. And I sort of think for people who are holding on to the animal agriculture supply system, it's like investing in the typewriter at this point because, it's served us. One could argue, I wouldn't be the one arguing that, but one might argue that it served us during a certain amount of time. And in its day, it was innovative, but that scale has really run its course. It's not resource efficient. So as we go from 7.6 billion people to 9.8 billion people on the planet, but we're not getting more land and we're not getting more water. In fact, with climate change, there's less arable land. So you have to feed a third more people with less resources.
Mhm.
You just can't do that with animal agriculture. So you have to find a solution. And the next step in innovation for our food supply, which is, by the way, how we survive, it has to be to a complete overhaul of the animal agricultural system, basically taking animals out of the equation. And that's the best business equation you'll ever have. And so I see, when you look at the plant-based meat businesses, oh gosh, I think it's like still maybe we're at 2% of the meat supply is plant-based meats. So you've got 98% of a white space, if you will. I mean, it's just the whole world is a white space. And I say that in food, but I also say that in farming, because once we start changing the food we make, then we have to change the farming equipment that we have, and we have to change how we farm. So vertical farming is going to be big. I mean, you are really talking about an upheaval of the entire food supply system. So again, it's going to be like computers. You're going to have all these new things to make. So I see big economic booms. I see big job booms because you're going to, again, just like we did with computers, you're going to put all these new groups of people to work to create new machinery, new farming. And this is going to be just a point of huge joy for the farmer. So this is not about leaving the farmer behind. As you know, I'm talking about so many things all at once, and I'm a quick talker, so I don't know if anyone's following this, but these
Totally. I'm on
oh,
the same
good.
page. I'm on the
Oh,
same page.
great.
And I'm excited about
Yeah.
it. I hear the energy behind it, and I hate
Yes.
that word energy, but it's true. Energy, passion, enthusiasm, and I love it. And, one of the things that I'm curious about is you're talking about this with such passion and such vigor and enthusiasm. And I'm wondering, I know that you work with a lot of clients when you're not talking about this and when you're not doing the journalistic duty that you have. How do your clients respond to this when you're talking them through this process and when you're helping them navigate it for their products?
Oh gosh, well, it really depends on the client. So I
Right.
have some clients who are very mission driven. They know all this stuff already, and they're like, yes, 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 we can't do it fast enough. We just don't have money, or they're mission driven, but they're not sure how to do it. So for them, I'm really helping them make the right connections, make the tactical moves. For them, it's about execution with small budgets. For the larger multinationals, It's really about understanding the space. So, we talked about 2% of the market at best maybe is plant-based meats, and the 98% isn't. So there's still a lot of people out there who are still reading the memo. They've got the memo, but they just have to read it. It's on their desk somewhere. So, those folks I'm bringing through a big informational rebirth, if you will, or sort of an indoctrination. I don't want to say that, like a baptism. I mean, I'm giving them all the information.
Right.
They're connecting the dots. They had heard a couple things before, but they weren't sure how they all played together. So, this is really bringing the story into life for them. And then they've got the budget and they've got the big teams, so they can put people behind it. But first they have to understand it. So it just kind of depends where the client is.
Right. Yeah, you have to meet people where they are, but I would
Yes.
imagine that you're going to come against walls sometimes, and that must be
Yes.
challenging sometimes. And I'm curious how you address that with people.
So usually by the time someone comes to me, they're going to put some time and money towards it. So they're committed. Every once in a while, the pullback I'll see from the client will be, hey, we're doing this in this department of this large multinational, but this other department down the hall, they don't, they're on a different mission. So I don't want to upset them, or this kind of thing. But I'm hearing less and less of that brands are afraid of being too outspoken because they might upset their other colleagues. I'm hearing less and less as the mission to incorporate plant-based products into the overall company product line is now coming from the very top. It's
Mhm.
not a department over here on the left that's trying to, maybe make heyday or whatever. It's now coming from the top, and all departments have to get on board and support the plant-based department, because that's a big profit source for
So
the
it's
future.
more ingrained in the core values of the company, which I think is going to make it easier.
Yes, the core vision. Yeah,
Yeah.
strategy for the future. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to imagine that's going to make it easier for everybody to incorporate, because it's going to be a core value. It's going to be who they are. So they're going to have less of a choice about it. They have to get on board.
Yes, they have to get on board. They're putting money behind it. They're putting personnel behind it. Their
Right.
consumers want it. This is now the time of the empowered consumer, those people who read labels and know about companies from top to bottom, not just the brand, but the company behind the brand, and everybody from the CEO down to the person on the line with customer service. And the consumer, millennials, Gen Z, and the next gen. What is the next gen? But there is a next gen. They're all really empowered consumers. They want to really feel that they can trust that brand. So this is a very interesting thing, because it used to be Danone and Nestle and Kellogg's, the big players, had everybody's trust, and they sort of, for lack of a better expression, made decisions for everybody. They told you what was good. They told you what you should eat. They
Right.
told you how dinner was supposed to go down, and everybody followed that. And then you had millennials and Gen Z sort of saying, like, I don't trust you. You have burned the bridge with me way too many times. And now it's not these big guys that captivate. It's more the small entrepreneur. This is really like they're having a moment, these small founders who are being treated like rock stars and getting all this venture capital money, because consumers are really forming relationship bonds and loyalty bonds with these new brands that really reflect the consumer's values moving forward. And I will say that's sort of a big downfall of the big corporation right now. They haven't gotten on board fast enough with the brand, with the values of the new consumer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see some new things with some of the larger brands creating the healthy Reese's peanut butter cup, or the healthy
Right.
Kit Kat, or I think that's what I saw recently.
Yeah,
Um,
plant-based. Yeah.
yeah, something, yeah, plant-based, right? Um, but I think the real innovators out there right now are those startups. I think we just saw our first plant-based oat milk file for their IPO yesterday,
Yes.
right?
Isn't that so exciting? Get your wallets out, everybody, because that's going to be quite the IPO.
That is going, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm a big Oatly fan.
Oh, sure. Hard not to be. Yeah.
Hard
Talk
not to
about,
be hard not to be a big Oatly fan.
yeah.
It's a great product. I love it in my coffee. I mean, and I did release my podcast with Bjorn yesterday. I
Oh,
don't know if you saw that.
I love
Um,
him. Yeah. He was
Ew.
on Plant-Based Business Hour too. I love him. He's just great.
he's so approachable. He's
Yes.
well versed in the topic. He sits
Yes.
back and listens, but he also provides great insight. And he's got a great
Yeah.
team around him of researchers. And they really are doing some innovative stuff, not just with Oatly, but now with Good Idea, the Good
Oh, I
Idea
know.
drink.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think he's really just a wealth of knowledge. And I love that he's going after sort of the diabetic,
mhm,
if you will, market. I sort of hate to like label them by their disease, but it's obviously type 2 diabetes, adult onset diabetes is a huge problem in North America and around the world. And taking on this kind of healthy approach to curtailing diabetes, at least trying to diminish those food spikes that you can get from sugar. I think he's onto something, again, quite brilliant.
it's really innovative because, oat milk is no longer innovative, right? It's now a
Right.
norm.
Yes.
There's so many, I'm not going to say it wasn't innovative, it completely was innovative, but now his new innovation is this new Good Idea drink. And it really is the future of food. It really is food as medicine, if you will.
Yes.
I love what he's doing, and he really is all about education. And I've actually sent it to a couple people that I know at some hospitals and doctors to see if there's an opportunity there, because I think that the product really, it speaks for itself. It's I've had it to drink. I think the way that he works with it is nothing short of brilliant. The way that they connect it, where you can see where your blood sugar is, where it spikes, where it goes. I mean, the whole thing. I just think it's super smart.
Yes.
So I love learning about new products like that. And that just goes back to some of the startups that we're talking about, and how you were saying that some of these startups are really the new innovators versus the larger companies. Um,
Yes, they're the new innovators, and they've really tapped into the zeitgeist of the consumer and how important the consumer's values are, and how the consumer, again, we're talking about the empowered consumer. They've decided to not only put their spending dollars where their values are, but they've decided to take their health back into their own hands. They're not even listening to their doctor necessarily. They're reading everything themselves in labels, but also on Google, and they're really doing the research, COVID being a huge tailwind for this, everyone being concerned about their health. They're really sort of saying, like, I don't trust, and I'm just going to figure it out myself. And so plant-based is getting this big boom. Whole food plant-based is getting a big boom. And I think just Bjorn's onto something great there.
I think so too. I think so too. And I also think that as we start to do more research and we start to talk to more doctors, people are now more than ever incorporating food as medicine, and they're looking to include it in their lifestyle. And there's more and more, there are many more innovators out there as they build these food businesses, which I'd love to hear from you on, to see what you've been seeing as you talk to some of these founders, what kinds of products you're seeing in this marketplace, because I've been seeing a bunch.
Yes, yes, of course. I think as we talk about plant-based, expanding beyond just the health component, but the lifestyle component. So I think you're going to see so much in plant-based materials. And I think that's a really exciting area. Of course, cellular meat, you continue to see the innovation there, and you're still quite a ways away from any kind of mainstream distribution. But I think before we even get to cellular agriculture, you're going to see lots of foods with fermented proteins. So Perfect Day being a great example of so they create ice cream that has animal proteins, but without the animal. They just take the code of the gene and they map it onto a microbe, and the microbe grows the same protein that cows grow, but
Wow.
now it's outside of the cow. Then you add fat and you add sugar, you all stuff, and you got ice cream. But I've had it. They sent me a lot and I ate them all.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I ate all. Okay, I didn't eat all 8 pints, just like everybody,
Eight
don't panic.
pints.
I
Wait,
did not. No,
can we digress? What is the name of this company?
Perfect Day.
Oh, Perfect Day. Okay. Just I want to
Yes.
make sure that our listeners know. And they sent you 8 pints. What are the flavors?
Oh my gosh. I sort of ate them all now, so I'm not sure I remember, but there was like a praline one, and a chocolate one, and a vanilla one, and a blueberry one, and a like strawberry white chocolate fudge one, and a caramel one, and like a pistachio one. It was so good.
Oh my
And
God,
I didn't eat.
pralines and cream.
Oh, it
I'm
was
thinking
so good.
Baskin and Robbins, but I'm sure this is their version of the Baskin and Robbins pralines and cream kind of thing. incredible.
Yes, it's so, so good. It was ice cream. It was really ice cream. And, again, fat and sugar and stuff. So, this is not a health food, people. We're talking about ice cream. It's still ice cream, so, but no animals involved. So no, you're talking about this whole line of foods that are going to come out through precision fermentation, which is non-animal
Right.
animal proteins. So it's very fascinating. And then on the, kicking it old school on the plant-based side, you're going to see a lot of whole food plant-based. So that's really coming into its own when people sort of start to distinguish between comfort food or junk food vegan and whole food plant-based vegan. And that's going to be great for health. Like we were talking about Bjorn's objectives here. That's going to be great for health and healthcare costs. And we're really talking about lifestyle again as we get out of the food realm. So I'm hoping, and I think this is coming, that you're going to see insurance companies start to give a discount for plant-based eating or support plant-based eating in some way. If it's not through monetary discounts, which, hey, makes a lot of sense to me because, unhealthy people are very expensive and meat and dairy make you unhealthy. So, you do the math there. So I'd love to see it happen in a way of discounts. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's going to move. And I will say this, it's going to move so fast. So when the dominoes start falling, I'm going to say by the end of this year or early next year. I mean, we're seeing some because we're in the plant-based business world. So we're seeing some, but I mean, bigger dominoes that fall. It's just going to go really quickly. And I think it'll really start like a year from now.
Yeah. Well,
Essential Ingredients is powered by Next Gen Chef. Next Gen Chef is a movement that supports food and beverage entrepreneurs around the world by fostering a sense of community and providing its members access to mentors and a wealth of resources and guidance. Next Gen Chef feeds members with the knowledge they need to build better for you food and beverage businesses, so the world can have greater access to healthier food, comprehensive food education, and increased affordability. If you like what you hear on this podcast, continue the conversation or ask new questions on the Next Gen Chef app, available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Follow Next Gen Chef on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at Next Gen Chef. Join Next Gen Chef and let's change the future of the food industry together.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to your point about the insurance, it's kind of like how you get a discount if you do X amount of steps or something
Right.
like that. I'm sure we've all heard of that, the insurance thing, right?
Yes.
So it could be an easy thing. Or if you go to the gym, you get X discount.
Yes.
For our
Yes.
listeners, they can't see my hand quotes, right? But
Yes. Yes.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. That would be very smart. And I just want to digress to the ice cream. Have you tried Eclipse?
Yes, I have. I tried Eclipse. My gosh, pre-COVID, September in person with the founders would have been September of
Elon? Did you meet Elon?
2019. Well, so I was at a veg fest and I waited till there was like 2 seconds of no line. So it wasn't very fast. And so I just got to quickly meet them. It's not like I know them. And it's not like they would remember me, but yeah, I tried it in person and it was super good. But the version I had, so I was saying 2019 September. So that's like in plant-based years, plant-based years are like dog years. So in plant-based years, that's a year and a half. That's a lifetime. So I'm sure the product has gone through a gazillion iterations, but at the time it was soft serve.
Yes, they came to one of the events that Next Gen Chef did.
Great.
And they were giving out their soft serve and everyone loved it. And it was
Love
great.
it.
It was big hits.
Yeah.
People were loving it. And now I see it's hand packed or it's packed and it's in the freezer section and it's
Right.
available in a variety of supermarkets and there's many more flavors and it's really grown. And like you said, in dog years, it's grown exponentially. So
Yes.
it feels like that was back when we would hear the ice cream truck go with their ding, ding, ding coming around. And now all of a sudden we fast forward and it's 1970 or 1995.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I mean, in a way, I feel bad for people who aren't working in the plant-based space because, for some people, of course, COVID has been, deeply upsetting. And then, the elections and just the general news of the world. And I just feel like everybody in plant-based, we just have good news every day. I'm so glad that I work and grateful that I work in this arena, because for us, if you don't pay attention to the news, you might just think like, oh my God, it's good news every day, all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, and to that point, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about COVID and how COVID has impacted your ability with what you're doing, how you've been able to help your clients, whether it's been able to have a positive or negative impact. Maybe you could share a little bit about that.
COVID has just been a huge tailwind because it's forced me, for better or worse, to not do interviews in person. And so I do so much more of them, and I can reach so many more people because I put out so many more, because I don't have to spend time and travel and all that. And it's much easier to get guests because they just have to hop on Zoom. The kind of investment dollars that we're seeing, because those kind of, I'll call them mainstream investors who look for large secular trends and large secular shifts. So they may be invested early in the semiconductor arena, or they invested early in Alta Energy. They're here. They see the dollar signs. They're no dummies. They may not be mission aligned, but they see the dollar signs. So they're investing early and big in plant-based and cellular and fermented proteins. So the kind of money that comes in, I'll quote Lisa Faria, the CEO of Stray Dog Capital and Glass Wall Syndicate member, whom I love. She just says it's like crazy, stupid money out there. And I totally know what she means. I mean, people are getting in, and they're getting in big. So that means that more and more small plant-based businesses are getting funded. And so there's capital there, and there's this interest in everyone's health. So the consumers are there. They're there to listen to the podcasts, and they're there to try the products. So it's a great time for my clients as they get funding and their consumer base grows. It's a great time to be a journalist in this arena. I'm doing more and more radio and TV just beyond my own podcast. I'm doing more of those kind of things. And I do a little bit of investing. And so it's just great to have so many options. I mean, there are plant-based, cellular ag, and I say plant-based, meaning all three of these pillars, fermented proteins and cellular ag, all three of them together. There's so many more opportunities. I mean, they're just founders left and right coming to you. So it is a creative time. It's an energetic time. It's a happy time. It's a hopeful time. I mean, COVID has been tricky, of course, because I can't get to the gym. That's the real thing that's been hard for me. I can't get to the gym, and I haven't been as good about just doing, push-ups and sit-ups in my house because I've been wanting to work all the time. So I do my work with my bunny slippers, and I get a lot done.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean in terms of that. I actually got the mirror.
Oh, you did? I almost got the mirror. Is it good?
Love the mirror. Love the
Mm.
mirror. It's
Mm.
it's made it really easy because guess what? You know where you have to carve out the time to go to the yoga class?
Yeah,
For
you don't
the
have to do that.
45-minute yoga class, you have to carve out a half hour because you got to be there early, and then it ends, and then you need another minute to get out of the car and then drive back, and da da da. You carve out exactly how much time you need. You know exactly what instructor you're going to. Boom, you're in, you're out, it's done. It's very efficient.
Gosh darn it, I love that. Okay, I might end up doing that. I took up boxing. That was my answer to this.
Ooh, I did that when I lived in New York. I did boxing at a studio there, but it made me too broad, so I had to stop. I didn't like getting that broad.
How long were you doing boxing before you got broad?
A couple months.
That's so not very much. Interesting. Well, I've been doing boxing with the bag, and I've got one trainer, and we've both been tested and all that stuff. So I've been really liking the boxing, but okay.
I liked it. I remember my punches. I was
Yes,
like
yes.
really into it, and
Yeah.
I loved it, but I got too broad. I was like, and I'm already a little bit, I mean, not that I'm not that broad, but I got broad. So anyway, we digress from plant forward food. We digress from our thing. The other thing, I just got an electric bike.
Oh, you did. Oh, that's fun. Oh, that's super fun. And we've been thinking about getting electric bikes, and we've been thinking about getting like electric mountain bikes.
That's
Like we
what
might go off trail and stuff. Yeah.
that's what I got. So I'll share my link with you. Um,
Okay.
so now that everybody knows what we do with our workouts, we can share
Yeah.
links for those in our show notes in case anyone
Okay.
else
Yes.
is interested in the
You
mirror,
point to the
electric
show.
bikes, or boxing. We'll get back to the show now.
Oh my gosh.
Because I want to
Love
make
it.
sure that we can get as much information from Elysabeth as possible for all of our listeners. We've got a couple other things I want to cover. because I know that she probably has some tips that she can share for some of those new founders out there listening today as they go to grow their businesses, their plant-based businesses.
Okay. The superhero secret weapon for founders is it has to mean something to you personally. So that really is what gets investors behind you. And that really is what's going to make your product stand out. I would never say that plant-based is now a crowded marketplace. We talked about before about how, there's white space of basically still 98% if you're talking about meats, but still it's a much busier place than it was, let's say, a year ago. So, really do that thinking early on. Are you just trying to, and I'm not saying anyone's doing this, but if you can see a trend and just kind of hang your hat on it because, ooh, I can make some money here. I think that's harder to stand out at this point. And you really need to be that passionate entrepreneur from the beginning about how much you believe in it. Like for example, I always find it tricky when I'm presented to from a carnivore for a vegan product. And I see that more and more, or people saying, oh, I'm on the way to being flexitarian. I just don't understand it. And then you're wanting me to invest in this vision that you haven't really brought into your own life. I don't know. So I think you got to nail that one first. There's no time like now. We are living through an age that you may not ever see again, even if you're in your 20s or 30s. I mean, these kind of complete shifts of how we do absolutely everything that affects us 3 times a day, they don't come around very long. So, do your due diligence, do your research, make sure that you're testing the product and, you're making it in your kitchen, and then you are getting it out to Veg Fest. I know that those are down during COVID, but you're dropping the samples off to all your neighbors down your block, whatever. You get out there and get that customer testing, because you can't get behind a product that doesn't have legs. But now's the time. I mean, this is just, I don't think we'll ever see anything like this again in the next 100 years. This is the big shift.
So thank you for that, Elizabeth. I think our founders will really find that useful. And I just want to go back to a couple of things. You mentioned flexitarian. So for our listeners that are not familiar with flexitarian, could you talk a little bit about what a flexitarian is?
Sure thing. In fact, I have a question for you after I answer your question. So a flexitarian is someone who eats primarily plant-based, but if they're at a party and it's pepperoni pizza, they'll have it and they're not going to rack their brains over it. Or if they're out and the only option is, a cheese pizza, then they'll do cheese, even if, usually they try not to. So they'll have eggs from time to time. I mean, they're not drawing a hard line in the sand, but they get plants and they want to move that way. And that's kind of their regular way of moving through the world, except when they kind of fall off or, just roll with it in a different way. A reducetarian is someone who's a meat eater and they've made a conscious choice to reduce their intake.
I'm a reducetarian.
Okay. So what made you decide to become a reducetarian?
I think it was through education, through the research that I do, by bringing on all the different people that I do, by doing what I do, by providing the access to the information and enabling other people to make more informed choices. I inherently am now making more informed choices myself. Yes. While I do enjoy meat a lot, I also feel that I'm now more knowledgeable about the impact it has both for our body and our wellness, as well as the impact it has on the environment. So as a result, I'm making an informed choice not to have it as much. I do notice the deficiency in it about once a month.
The deficiency?
My deficiency in meat.
In your, because
my body.
What do you think you're not getting?
Around my cycle. Around my cycle. And so when I tried to take it out then and I put it back, I feel the difference in having it. And I've tried to do other things to replace it. And I haven't been able to successfully do that.
Interesting.
So
Are you thinking it's iron? Because there's other ways to get iron for sure.
I've tried adding
Of course
iron
you
in,
have.
all
Yeah.
sorts of things. So, philosophically, I've also done some research around Chinese medicine and
Mm-hmm.
understanding, and I also did go to Pacific College of Oriental Medicine for a couple of years. And what they teach you is that you're supposed to eat red, whether it's strawberries, meat, all
Oh,
sorts of things to put it in your body because that's what's falling out. Falling out. Sorry, he just dropped something, so that was falling out. I apologize. I got a little
no
distracted.
worries. So like tomatoes, would tomatoes count?
Except that I don't eat nitrates and nightshades, so for other health reasons. So because I have a little bit more of a tailored diet for my needs, it, I'm a little bit, it makes it a little bit more challenging. That being said, it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've made choices, and part of the choice is to be more plant forward, to be more of a reducetarian. I do love meat. I have to say, I really enjoy eating it, but I've made, because of everything I've read, and because of the impact that I see that it has, I'm really making an informed choice to reduce
Yes.
it a lot.
Yes. So this is, I'm the aberration, right? Most people say I like the taste of it, or I enjoy the chewing of it, or something, which was not for me. But so I think most people are in your camp, I guess is what I'm saying. The large market that we see, it's not because vegans are growing from 3% to 3.2 or something. I mean, it's because they're more flexitarians and more reducetarians. And so you're seeing more people get rid of meat and try to be on their way to plants. They've probably heard their whole lives like, oh, this is bad for your heart. Your cholesterol numbers are too high. You have pre-diabetic, or maybe you're already into adult onset of diabetes. And a lot of people think that diabetes is just sugar. It's not. It's the fat in your diet. And so saturated fat, if you want me to run through that for people, I can explain that.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, so saturated fat. Okay, for the best information, go to Dr. Greger. But since he's not here right now, I'll do the gig. Okay. So if you think of saturated fat, you're eating a lot of meat. What happens is you're eating more meat than your body's processing. So this is really just high level, gross over exaggeration here. But basically the concept is your cells start to line themselves with fat because you have all this saturated fat, too much of it. So when the sugar is in the blood, the cell's job is to filter out the sugar, and that's what it does. But it can't do that because it's stuffed with fat. So the sugar ends up staying in the blood, not because you have too much sugar or you're eating too much sugar, but because you have too much fat, which has not allowed the cells to do their filtering process as they should. So saturated fat, and that's animal proteins, is a big culprit there for diabetes as well as for heart, blood pressure, this kind of thing. So, most people are they've heard that somewhere along their lines,
Right.
that, it's not good for you. So a lot of people taking their health back into their own hands, particularly during a pandemic when they realize they don't want to be compromised because they have to be at their best and strongest. I think a lot of people are in your camp, and that's what's really pushing the market forward. And if you love meat, you're in luck because you have plant-based options that, this is not 1970. So things now taste great. You have cellular ag, which is on the horizon, and that's meat. That's
Right.
not like meat. That's not a meat replacement. That is meat. So, you can have your meat and eat it too.
And really what makes me happy is that I'm hearing more and more people making informed choices around this.
Yes.
And that's really what I'm hoping to do, is to empower people to make those more informed and healthier choices.
Yes.
So before we wrap this up, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the power of the media, because
Yes, of course.
I know that you've got a strong background in that, and I know that you help a lot of founders and startups with that. So if you could talk a little bit about that and how a plant-based company can grow their market share and tap into that, that would be great.
Sure. Okay. I think I'll start by saying hit me up because you might have questions. We're going to go over this really fast. So again, you can find me at elisabethalfano.com, or just reach out to me at elizabethalfano.com, and LinkedIn's a great way to find me. You can hire PR for sure. And PR is about relationships. So if you don't have those relationships, because you've been busy in the lab, God bless you, or, whatever, universe bless you, or however you want to say it, well done you. If you're busy in the lab and you're not out there running around with journalists and you don't have those connections, definitely it's not a bad idea to get a PR person. But if you feel pretty savvy on social media, LinkedIn, and you feel like you have some connections and you've maybe already followed some journalists and you've found their emails, you can write your own press release. So if you are tight on a budget, this is not going to be rocket science. Can't recreate the relationships overnight, but if you can wiggle your way into a few, you can do the press release yourself. And that is a 1-page. It's funny, when I get off this, I'm going immediately into giving a presentation on how to write a really good press release. But there are 10 points to a very good press release. Anybody can do it. They're all very simple. I'm happy to, share a template with people or what have you, or share you the link is what I'll do to my next presentation. So you can save money there. I think the more important thing isn't just that press release, but it's that strategy behind the press release. Because please know this, the same is true for marketing. You can't do a one shot and goodbye. So you're not going to get it from one press release. You have to do the press release followed up by the other press release 6 weeks later, followed up by the other press release. That is working in tandem when you get your product on shelves, which is working in tandem with that social media campaign, which is working in tandem with your direct to consumer sampling. I mean, it has to all work together, and that brand has to be consistent. That communication has to be consistent. And there's no such thing as like, oh, I was listed in Forbes and now my company's made it. Not in this crazy, busy, loud, everyone's screaming and shouting at the top of their lungs on social media. So to stand out, my one major tip to you as we run to our next stuff is consistency, consistency, consistency. So a lot of the work I do with my clients is branding so that we get their brand really solid, really tight, really memorable, because it's all about creating that memorability, that relationship, that trust with the consumer in a way that we never had to before. So a really strong brand so that we can then communicate our message consistently again and again and again.
Okay, well, I think that our founders that gives them a little tip of the iceberg. And for more direction and a little hand holding, they can reach out to you. And
yes,
maybe
definitely.
If you have a link to that, we could include whatever that link is in the show notes.
Wonderful. So that presentation, which I'm literally giving in about 3 minutes here, that is going to be out, and I want to say mid-March, definitely before March 20th. So I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but I'll get it for you.
Well, if you give us the date, maybe we can link them up so that
Right.
it will be intentionally scheduled.
Okay. I'll do that for sure. I'll make that note. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Elysabeth, so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I want to thank our listeners for joining us. And this podcast is sponsored by Next Gen Chef. If you like this, don't forget to follow us on iTunes, Spotify. It's called Essential Ingredients with Justine. And for all the listeners, don't forget that if you're interested, you can download the Next Gen Chef app for free. And you can connect with other like-minded founders and entrepreneurs building better for you food businesses. So look forward to seeing you here every week on Tuesday when a new episode drops. Thanks again, Elysabeth, so much for joining me.
It's such a thrill to be here. Thank you for all the work you do. And thank you to all your listeners. They are rock stars in and of themselves. We are all making a difference together. Thank you, everybody.
And we'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye. To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Next Gen Chef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.